Mm-mm.
Temba had been on a diet for the last few weeks, so today his wife asked, "How is it going?" "Not well," Temba replied. "I had 7 eggs for breakfast this morning." "Oh dear, were they hard boiled?" she asked. "No, they were Easter eggs."
Eggs for
Good
breakfast.
evening and welcome to Talk with Rams, which means my name is Rams Mahmoud, and thank you very much for joining us on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Instagram. My guest tonight is global speaker and life and business coach, Dr. Thando Sibanda. And tonight we're going to talk about the reset button, pressing the reset button, making a positive change decision for your business, getting ready for the next wave, because we're going to talk about the next wave. This wave will end. You need to get ready for the next wave. Dr. Thando Sibanda, good evening and welcome.
Well, good evening, my brother. How are you doing, man?
Always good, dark and lovely. Thank you. How are you?
No, I'm well. I'm well. I'm well. I love that response, man.
You know, they say you must self-affirm before anybody affirms you.
Absolutely.
It's so good to have you, Dr. T. You know, the
Thank you.
feedback I got since last Friday has just been amazing.
Wow. 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 No, I'm glad there's value. There's value for our viewers and listeners.
You have no doubt that you create value. You would not be back here. I don't revisit people who don't create value. I'm kidding, Doctor. But you create a lot of value, must say.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Let's get down to it, Dr. T. And I'm going to ask you the very first question. Why is it important for us to press the reset button in our businesses at this moment?
Well, Rams, I think if there's one thing that everybody in our country, and really not just in South Africa, but also globally, if there's one thing that we are all coming to terms with, is the fact that the situation calls for a reset button. You know, it calls for that. I mean, things were bad enough before the coronavirus hit in terms of just the economy and economic growth. I mean, if you look at the 250,000 SMMEs that are registered, being only able to churn out, 28, 29% of employment, the government, you know, and the large corporations providing up to 56% of employment, and then now the coronavirus hits, you know, you and businesses have had to, you know, to shut down quite a lot. I mean, you saw Edcon, you know, filing for business rescue, having lost over 2 billion just in the context of a month and a half, close to 2 months. And you realize that, in fact, the downstream impact of that is not even just the fact that Edcon is a big business, as are other big businesses. No, it's the fact that they are supplied by small business owners like you and me. And so if they can't pay the small business owners, guess what? That rollover impact comes and it hits directly at us. And so you find that a lot of businesses are struggling, business people are struggling, income has been lost. You know, we definitely have to hit a reset button. There has to be a reset button that is it in the context of what we're doing.
So, is it business as usual, or is there another phenomenon at play here?
Look, the reality is that it's actually business unusual. It's business unusual. When you look at it, there's the whole VUCA concept where we say that we are living in a VUCA world. We're living in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. Now, when you understand that whole VUCA concept, remember it came up, I think it was in 1987, right at the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the American War College, came up with the acronym to just describe the different type of environment that was going to be prevalent. Well, if you fast forward from 1987 to where we are today, that VUCA concept is now a very big buzzword in businesses because the situation is precisely that. But here is the interesting thing. We were talking of a VUCA environment in the context of the fact that, change is so imminent within business and things are changing consistently. There's competition, there's technology, there's 4IR. Now it's VUCA so much more because we have an enemy that we can't see. We have what we call a medical emergency that has resulted in an economic turmoil, in an economic quandary and conundrum. That's the point.
Dr. T, for those who may not know VUCA as in VUCA, what does it mean? What does it stand for?
Okay, sure. VUCA now means the V there stands for volatile. It means that the current situation is volatile. It's characterized by or subject to rapid, unexpected change. So you see, when we look at the environment, just look at it. Just what? Barely 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, we didn't know, in a sense that business would be affected at this level. I consult for organizations, and one of my clients was saying, you know what, I don't even think we're gonna go back and reopen our offices. We're just gonna keep one room, for admin purposes, but everybody's gonna be working from home. Now, this was not in their strategic plan for 2020. No, now the situation changed, and it has impacted the way things are gonna happen. So that's the volatile. The V, the U is uncertain. It's an indefinite, unreliable, and unpredictable business situation where we are at right now, and that's just what it is. People are not able to say for certain what's going to happen and how things are going to move forward. Then the C is for complex. It's made up of complicated or interrelated parts. So there's a lot of complexity that we're seeing in the situation, and of course, the A is ambiguous. It's doubtful or uncertain. It's capable of being understood in two or more or more different ways. That's the point.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's me, but I keep on losing your audio there, Dr. T. I hope it's just me, but I can hear you now.
Okay.
Let me welcome a few of our viewers on Facebook. Nozuko Viki Chakavula, Yvonne Poti Kapeni, and Nozuko also says, good evening, Dr. T, and Rams.
Good evening.
Homuso Machila says, good evening, Rams and Dr. T.
Thank you.
And then I think that's what, okay, we've got a bit more on Facebook. We have Tandega Mapumulo says, we are feeling the effects. We are, Tandega, certainly we are. And Lukolo Tabat is also watching. On Instagram, we have Nswaki, we have 3T services. I'm not sure how to read that, but I'll get to it properly. Dr. T, okay. I get it. I get the VUCA. Now, now my next question may sound elementary, but I think I get more great questions when I ask elementary questions. So in the context of this uncertainty, what questions should I be asking myself as a business owner?
Look, the main thing here is that it's really a question that should say, what does the future hold? I think that's the main question that a business owner should be asking themselves. The question is what does the future hold? But what they really should be hearing is the question, how tolerable and ready for change am I? Because remember, again, the danger with change is that change is always contextualized within a certain time frame. If you don't change, you miss out on the advantages of the change. So right now, the bigger question, of course, is a question that says, what does the future hold? That's a question of uncertainty. But in uncertainty, right, every business owner should actually be hearing the question that is saying to them as an individual, how tolerant am I towards change? How ready am I towards change? Because that is the context that we find ourselves in.
I Dr. T, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
For a second, I had lost it. Okay, I tend to think that, there's a term that's used a lot in business, especially when people are scared. We get to be called dinosaurs, or our businesses get to be called dinosaurs. Is that description, does it matter in this period where you can't find yourself living 2,000 years ago in a space that is already 2,000 years ahead of today?
Yes. I think that's a very relevant term today, because just the nature of the capital nature of business today implies that if you don't change, you can quickly become a dinosaur. Now, let me explain this in the context of disruption. You see, we are living in what we call the disruptive age, where you have almost, some of these guys that almost seem to come from nowhere. Remember, in the past, it would take, 20, 30, 40, sometimes 100 years to be a billion-dollar company. Now you are having companies that are scaling through exponential technology and become multi-million, 100 million, a billion-dollar company within a space of 4 or 5 years. And so you find that disruption is no longer industry-based. It is now ideas-based. So as a business person, you need to have that mindset shift that takes you to a point where you understand that disruption is not industry-based, it's ideas-based. What am I saying? I'm saying that a guy like Elon Musk, who is not a motor engineer or a vehicle technician, will come and disrupt the market through Tesla. He's not a solar technician, but he will come up with a solar city. He's not an astronaut, but he will come up with SpaceX and stuff like that. So you find that the guy who's going to disrupt you, who's going to make you a dinosaur, is not even your competitor sitting down the road doing what you're doing. It's someone else sitting somewhere else, but generating the economy of ideas more than following the trends of your industry.
Dr. Thando.
Yes, sir.
So now, Dr. T, when I get scared, and it's a human reaction. When people get scared, we get into a cocoon. We worry. We wait for the rain to end. We wait for the dust to settle. We wait for the thunder to go away. Should I be doing that? Can I wait for the skies to clear so that then I come out and do my business again?
Right. Now that's the danger with especially, you see, uncertainty breeds what we call a freeze, a fear and freeze response in us. Have you ever seen someone, when they get into a position where something startles them, and you are watching, you're like, why don't they run away? But somewhere, somehow, all the power, all the strength of running away, seems to dissipate. I think it's the cortisol, or I think, just fear can cause a freeze response, and that's the challenge with a lot of us right now, in the context of our businesses, and with many small businesses, by the way, there are no financial reserves that can go for 6 months. People are probably on a 1 month basis. It's more a hand to mouth, and or at least 1 or 2 months. So when a situation like this happens, it freezes a lot of people to say, what, let me just wait and see. But again, the wait and see attitude is very detrimental to business at this point. And I've been looking at some piloting lessons, and one thing they taught me is that there are 2 types of pilots. You've got your fair weather pilot. Now, a fair weather pilot only flies the plane when there are clear skies. There's not much wind. The skies are clear. You can see the clouds. You can see it's a blue sky. A fair weather pilot will take his plane and he will fly it, at that point. But now, here is a difference. There's another type of pilot called an instrument panel pilot. Now, an instrument panel pilot does not need fair skies for them to fly, because they can fly in any weather. They use what is called blind air navigation. They understand, their 10 indicator, their ball bank indicator, their airspeed indicator, their climb, their rudder control, their aileron control. All of these are different types of controls that you have when you're flying. They trust their instruments. I remember one time I was flying to the US. I took off from Thando 9:30 at night. There was a storm. I started saying to myself, dude, what are you doing? Why didn't you just stay at home? You're gonna die here. I was very scared. So and then the pilot comes on just before we take off. He says, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your pilot. He gives his name and he says, we know there's a storm, but don't worry. We're going to rise to 40,000 feet, in the air, and we're going to go and fly above the storm. So just fasten your seatbelt. There'll be some turbulence for the next 10 minutes, but we're going to be fine. We're going to get you to Washington. Can you imagine? I felt so relieved because I had an instrument panel pilot who is not moved by the weather outside. He doesn't need clear skies, but he can stick to the principles of aviation and he can get us to where we need to go. So we need to be like that in this time as business owners.
On Instagram, Pumeza has joined us, so has Musa Kuzwayo, and women of many heads, South Africa, also joined. We also have on Facebook, Eugene Zwani, Gibson Yaduza says, good evening, Rams and Dr. T. Maswabile Kwan is watching. Silo Zilemia says, Bo Abudi. Yes, Silo. I'm glad that you recognize that, Bo Abudi. Dr. T, I've heard you. You've painted this picture, but I now need to know, how do I get myself then to reset that party? What are the trajectories of this change that I need to embrace?
Right. I think the most important thing at this point, Rams, is remember what I was talking about last week from the winning mindset, is the fact that we need to embrace change as a necessary and as a very important part of our business evolution. We've got to embrace change. See, when you look at a butterfly, whether it's in a cocoon or it's a larva stage or it's a pupa or it now has the wings, it's always in a constant state of change. Now, change is very difficult for human beings because when you understand just our science, our neuroscience, is that we form our behaviors, we form our habits, we form our thinking patterns. Everything about us comes from repetition. So we create these neural pathways out of repeating a certain maneuver or a certain action or a certain routine until it becomes ingrained, until we have muscle memory. Now, the challenge with change is that it demands of us that we consistently develop new neural pathways. We are letting things we have known go, and we are constantly in a state of learning. Now, that's very different. That's why we've come up with sayings like, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. We've come up with things like, say, accept me as I am. I'm too old to change. I've evolved too much to change. Now, that's the challenge. But when it comes to the 21st world of business, if we are going to be viable, whether it's a spaza shop, or whether it's a consulting, or whether it's a corporation, we have to embrace change as a very consistent part of business growth, business development, and business process. It's almost like in business, you function with your bags packed, if I were to use that analogy. Someone who lives with their bags packed, it's because they know they can travel anytime. So in terms of just reading the business scenarios, we need to be like that. Things change and they're changing consistently. And so that's what it is. And then let me just quickly take you through some of the trajectories of change that are very, very important, right? So when it comes to change, we need to understand that there are three main trajectories I'm going to speak to just in terms of our change tolerance and change readiness. The first one is that it's important to change before you have to. See, changing before you have to is critical. It's a big win. When you change before you have to, you call the shots. It's change that is initiated from your willpower, and there is energy for change. Remember, change requires energy. There is energy for it. Now, I remember actually a saying by Sir Richard Branson of Virgin. He said, if we had not taken the decision to look for new opportunities and change, we would still be a record company. Can you imagine that? And you're talking of Virgin, that was way back in 1972 when they founded the company. They realized that they had to find new opportunities. They had to jump into new opportunities. They initiated that evolution themselves. They pressed their own reset button. They didn't wait for circumstances to change. Today, I mean, what? They are making over, 20 billion pounds in terms of turnover. They employ over 70,000 people in different markets. They are in space travel. They are in the mobile sector, they are in health. You know, why? Simply because they changed before they had to. It's a very big win when you do that, because it's on your terms. The second dimension of change, of course, is what I call changing because you have to. Now, that's very, very different. That's very difficult. But some companies do that, and they do that very, very well. You know, they are able to adapt. You know, companies like Amazon adapted. They are amazing today. You know, companies. You remember Reed Hastings started Netflix, and he changed when he had to. It's not an easy change, but it's a very, very big win. It means you are adapting, you are surviving, you are moving forward. It's the same scenario right now. There are companies, there are people, business people that will decide not to change. And guess what? The situation will push them into the change trajectory. And if they change because they have to, it's not easy, but it's a good win. It's like going to the doctor and he says, you know what, if you don't give up smoking, your lungs are going to go. Then you make a lifestyle change. Or if you don't give up doing this and that, this will happen to you. You change, but it's a difficult one, but it's a good win. It's a good win.
A good friend of mine, before you go to the next one, Dr. T, changing
Yes.
after the fact, a good friend of mine says, when the doctor tells you to you're going to die because you're smoking, he says, that's when you change doctors. The next one will only tell you in 3 years' time.
It still changed. It's still changed. Absolutely. So now the third dimension of change is now changing after you have to. Now, changing after you have to is a very, very dangerous type of change. I'm sure a lot of us remember Kodak. Remember the Kodak moment, Kodak camera.
Yes.
You know, remember Kodak had 90% of the Kodak moment market. They owned the cameras, they owned the films, they owned the labs. They literally owned everything concerning the Kodak moment. But guess what? Steven Sasson, one of their engineers, discovers the digital camera, the first megapixel. You know, he approaches the bosses and tells them about it. And they say to him, well, Steven, how far to prime time? You know, and he tells them probably 15 years. They're like, no. They didn't want to reinvent themselves. They didn't want to compete with their own business model. They didn't want to press the reset button. Guess what? When the digital camera came out and someone else had discovered it, they went obsolete. 100 years in business, $21 billion, a long history. They became obsolete almost overnight. They are not the only guys. The same thing happened to guys like BlackBerry. You had a BBM, I had BBM, we all had BlackBerry messengers. Everybody loved that little phone, man. Everybody. I remember when President Obama took office, one of the discussions was what are they going to do to his BlackBerry? You know, and he had to hand it in so that they could make it secure. Everybody loved BlackBerry. But 2008, I'm on my way to Jamaica. I'm at the airport. The iPhone comes out. As the iPhone comes out, the BlackBerry boss had said, well, no one would ever want a phone without buttons. Hey, we know how the story goes. Everybody wanted a phone without buttons. Yeah. And so almost overnight, BlackBerry became a dinosaur. That's the problem with changing after you have to. Now, when you look at both these companies, when you look at Kodak, when you look at BlackBerry, what's the common denominator? It's their inability to change. It's because they couldn't embrace change and engage change when they needed to change. That is one of the challenges that they faced.
Which then brings us to the next issue, Dr. T, because I think in a manner of speaking, what you're saying is that those guys died because they held on to something called culture. This is how we do things. We don't care what the wave is telling us. We don't care what is coming in front of us. There could be an oncoming truck at 120 kilometers per hour. Our culture says we cross the road here. Is that what happened?
I'm telling you, the biggest thing when you look at those organizations, and not just those two, there are many more. I mean, we say it is the iceberg that sank the Titanic. No, it was company culture that sank the Titanic. It was a culture that was not empowering strategy. So you find that we have to create a culture of change. We have to create a culture that embraces change, a change culture. You see, no, people don't have a change culture. People treat change as a separate exercise that happens when market forces change. But the challenge is that if you don't have change as a culture, you will always be catching up, playing catch up to changing market conditions. So we've got to actually create a culture of change where knowing that we are changing is actually a part of our organizational culture. In fact, you know, culture is how we show up in our business. Culture is how we do things around here. It is very, very critical that we understand the role of a culture of change within the context of our organizations. In fact, yeah. Back to you.
Continue, Dr. T.
Yes. I was going to explain it this way to say a lot of us need to understand culture in the context of strategy, because one of my favorite sayings is that culture will eat strategy for breakfast. Right, it's a very big subject. We can go a couple of weeks on it, but let me just introduce it for today. Let me introduce the concept of culture. Right, culture, as Peter Drucker said, culture will eat strategy for breakfast. Top and Rick comes and says not just for breakfast, but also for lunch and dinner. Why is that important? It's important because a lot of businesses and business people draw up strategy documents. Now, strategy is important, you know. The word strategy, remember, is the Greek word strategos, which means the general's art. So it's a military term. It's a term that says this is how we're going to take over, this is how we're going to win, this is how we're going to take the enemy out. You know, it talks about strategy and the modus operandi that guarantees victory, right? So now strategy is key. Companies will invest millions in strategy, go on strategy retreats, but then this is where I say strategy is the rocket. In any business, strategy is the rocket, but culture is the fuel.
Wow.
Strategy
the rocket is useless without the fuel.
I'm telling you the honest truth. You see, culture is the fuel that takes the rocket to where it needs to go. In fact, here's some interesting statistics, by the way, on the Saturn V rocket that took us to space, right? For example, there are 3 different stages of separation when a rocket goes to the space station. So on the Apollo mission, the first stage, it carried about 500,000 gallons of fuel just for stage 1, where the first separation happens. Then there is the second stage. As it goes, towards space, the second stage had another 80,000 gallons of liquid oxygen. And then there is the third stage. The third stage had another 19,000 gallons of liquid oxygen and another 66,000 gallons of hydrogen. So it all came up to about 950,000 gallons of fuel. So the culture or the fuel is normally 20 times the weight of the rocket.
Wow.
20 times.
Okay. Dr. T, I'm going to challenge
yes,
you that we conclude this conversation in 3 minutes. So I'm going to ask you my next question and see that you can do it in 3 minutes. Okay. Ultimately, any business is dependent on the leader, on the owner, on the proprietor.
Right.
So would you say for this change culture to happen, I, as the leader, am I the most important person or the people who work for me or with me?
Right. Just in conclusion, Rand, the speed of the pack is the speed of the leader. The speed of the pack is the speed of the leader. You see, the people that follow you will only go at your pace. So as the leader, you are the pace setter. as the leader, you are the one that actually gives the indication of the speed we are going at, of the culture we are employing, of the direction we are going. So if there is any challenges in an organization, it always starts at the top and it cascades to the rest of the organization. So the speed of the pack is the speed of the leader.
A question here from Nozuko is a question loaded with a comment. It says, so effectively, we are currently in a forced change by COVID-19. We just have to reset as individual corporations.
Oh, she couldn't have said it any better.
Wow.
Couldn't have said any better. We have to. Let's press the reset buttons. There's a situation. Let's press the reset buttons. By the time this is gone, we are already moving in the new direction of our businesses, and we already have a value proposition that can take us into the foreseeable future.
As usual, Dr. T, where do they find you? Where do they buy the work that you produce, the book that you produce, and stuff like that?
Oh, yes. I'm available on my website, drthando.com. I'm on Instagram, Dr. Thando Sibanda, Facebook, Dr. Thando Sibanda. On all platforms, you can find me, Dr. Thando. And I still have the book, The Winning Mindset. This book is available from drthando.com. You can just go to the store and you can purchase it. Most of the things I talk about, the concepts I talk about on The Winning Mindset are found in this book. I think that would be a great offering for anybody.
Great stuff. So let's talk about culture next week. Okay. Let's delve deeper into this culture matter.
I'd love it. I'd love to do that, my brother. I'd love to do that. Thank you so much, man.
Dr. Thando Sibanda, always wonderful having you here. I look forward to next week.
Sure. Thank you. Same to you. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much to everybody else who joined us. Temba, Edmund Podefe, Maswabile Khwale, everybody who joined on Facebook, Enyeleti on Instagram. We truly appreciate it. Again, I'm going to ask you to subscribe to the page on YouTube. It's Talk with Rams. And do like our page on Facebook. Do follow the page. And most importantly, do set your notifications so that you get us every time we are on. You don't want to miss Dr. T. You don't want to join now, like it happened with other people, you know? I see people are now joining at this moment. But thank you very much for joining. We're going to take a weekend break. Now that I'm doing the show, I now know weekends. For the last 2 weeks or 2 months of the lockdown, I never knew weekends. Now I know I'm getting into a weekend. Time for me to reset. It's been wonderful having you. I hope you follow what Dr. T told you. You reset that button and start afresh and get ready for the wave. The wave is never going to get ready for you. From me, Rams Mabote. And Frederick Mabizela, who's driving the show remotely from somewhere where I have no clue where he is. Good night and God bless.